What's up, one bar chads and chadettes? Welcome back to the channel once again. This week we are going to go over a classic Dragonknight tank build using Oakensoul and 1 bar. This is designed for dungeons and kind of your run-of-the-mill PVE content, so you can run dailies, pledges, and do some trials and stuff like that with a setup like this. So the best races would be Nord, Orc, or Imperial, but you could also use an Argonian, a Khajiit, a Dark Elf, or a Redguard. My DK is a Redguard, so that's what we're rolling with here. In a perfect world, I think that a Nord would be ideal, but you can just use what you like, being sure that the passives suit your needs. We're going to be placing 32 attribute points into health, and then 16 each into stamina and magicka. This gives us a decent sized pool all around, kind of giving us deeper pockets for blocking and for using our skills, while we also get a nice amount of health. For a Mundus, I like to use the Atronach for some extra magicka sustain while I'm spamming skills, or you could also use the Lord if you'd like a bit more health. And then for food, we'll just be using Bewitched Sugar Skulls for a nice all-around buff with a bit of extra health recovery. And then we can just use Tri-Restoration Potions as we usually do, since we have so many sitting in the bank and they work for pretty much every 1 bar build perfectly. Onto our gear sets, we'll be using 5 pieces of Powerful Assault, which is a medium PvP set from the Imperial City. You can also just buy these pieces from the guild trader if you'd like to. This set gives us some extra health and stamina, increases our damage, and whenever we cast an assault ability while in combat, ourselves and up to 5 group members gain a nice buff to their weapon and spell damage. We'll be wearing our 5 pieces as a sturdy helmet with a prismatic glyph, a necklace and a ring, both healthy with prismatic recovery glyphs, and then as an infused sword with either a crusher glyph or an absorb magicka glyph, and then finally a sturdy shield with also a prismatic glyph. Our other set, Turning Tide, is a heavy set looted from the Shipwright's Regret DLC dungeon. This set also gives us a boost to our max health and stamina, and when we block, we gain Flowing Water for 10 seconds, which causes our next bash attack to deal magic damage and apply major vulnerability to enemies in our area. This can happen every 15 seconds and gives us a nice kind of smoky purple graphic to easily visualize this debuff. We'll be wearing Turning Tide on our chest as reinforced with a prismatic glyph, and then Sturdy as a belt, shoes, legs, and gloves, all with prismatic glyphs. Our monster piece is going to be a light Stonekeeper's shoulder in Well Fitted, otherwise known as Well Shitted, nice and pre-stained with poop particles, along with a prismatic glyph on there as well. And then our Oakensoul ring will be infused with a prismatic cost reduction glyph, which lowers the cost of all of our skills regardless of which resource they use. A quick rundown of some useful alternative gear sets in case you don't like or don't have access to either of the sets I'm running. Would start with Magma Incarnate as a monster piece from the Dread Cellar DLC dungeon. This one grants magicka and stamina recovery rather than adding to our pool with Stonekeeper. Void Bash is a very popular set for dungeon runners as it takes away the headache of having to pull enemies manually with skills. This is a 2-piece set that can be looted in its vanilla form from the Viteshran Hollows Arena, or the perfected version from the veteran version of the arena. Essentially, you'll use Power Bash, and all enemies within 12 meters will automatically be pulled to you, also applying Major Maim to them, which decreases their damage output. This set would be annoying to grind for, but if you're someone who likes to spam arenas, it might be up your alley. Drake's Rush is another popular set from the Black Drake Villa DLC dungeon. This one grants extra health, stamina, and when you bash an enemy, you and up to 3 group members gain major heroism, increasing ultimate generation. This one would work very well in 4-man content, or if you have a setup where you're specifically trying to regain ultimate very quickly. Battalion Defender is a heavy PvP set that grants extra health, stamina, healing done, and then when you block, yourself or a group member will be healed. This is a nice generic set that just helps out the healer a bit. Crimson's Oath Reeve is a heavy set from the Dread Cellar DLC dungeon that grants us extra armor and health, and while we're in combat and we cast an ability, drink a potion, or use a poison that applies a major or minor buff to ourselves or an ally, we send out a wave of energy that reduces enemies' armor. And finally, a very popular selfish set is the Heavy Warrior Poet, which is looted in the Vardenfell Overland. This one grants us a bunch of extra max health, armor, and also grants us minor toughness, which increases our health by an additional 10%. There are plenty more useful sets in the selfish and group categories, and really any changes are up to you and your own personal playstyle. You can usually get away with wearing one selfish set and one group set in most of the normal content in the game, but if you really want to be a team player, you'll probably usually be wearing 2 group sets, and I would probably consider Oakensoul to be the selfish aspect of this build. Over in the champion points tree, we'll use whatever we want in green as usual. In the blue tree, we'll be slotting Duelist's Rebuff, Unassailable, Bulwark, and Enduring Resolve. If you'd prefer more stats instead, you can always swap Arcane Supremacy and Endless Endurance here rather than Bulwark and Enduring Resolve. Over in the red section, we're going to slot Boundless Vitality, Fortified, Rejuvenation, and Celerity. If there's something you like better than Celerity and maybe Rejuvenation, those can be swapped out. I personally like to use Celerity to get that bit of speed buff so it doesn't feel like I always have to race the DPS characters to the next pack of trash mobs every time. For passive skills, we'll want to get all of our in-class passives, everything from One Hand and Shield, all of the passives for all 3 weights of armor, if you decide to take that route, the Undaunted passives to go along with the armor passives, all of your racial passives, and then anything you like from Alliance War and Craft as usual. Our skill bar will start with our melee range taunt and debuff tool, Pierce Armor. We'll be using this primarily on bosses and bigger enemies in trash mob packs that aren't pullable. Next up we have Fragmented Shield. This will give us and our party a nice damage shield and increase our healing done via Major Mending. And then for a ranged taunt/pull, we'll be using Unrelenting Grip. This launches a fiery chain that deals flame damage, pulls a single target over to us, taunts them to attack us, and gives us Major Expedition after hitting a target. If we shoot one at an enemy that can't be pulled, we get the magicka cost refunded back immediately. The next skill we're using is Burning Talons. This one immobilizes all enemies near us that we've pulled in, also dealing some flame damage and providing a synergy that our party can activate that does even more flame damage. And then our 5th skill is going to be Echoing Vigor from the Assault skill line. This acts as a heal over time on ourselves as well as our nearby party members. This gets buffed from our Major Mending that our Fragmented Shield provides, and also procs the damage buff for our party provided by the powerful Assault set. Our ultimate here is going to be Magma Shell. This one limits the amount of damage we can take to just 3% of our max health, while also dealing flame damage to nearby enemies and giving our party a damage shield for 100% of their max health. This comes in clutch when you're running very low on health, or you're in a dangerous boss dynamic and can save your entire party if used at the right time. Some other useful skills that may come in handy would be Green Dragon Blood, Hardened Armor, and Reverberating Bash. So keep those in mind if you're not liking one of the skills listed before, or if you want to make any slight adjustments. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the main idea is to figure out what's actually fun for you to play. Using only the top meta gear sets can get boring, and you should always experiment with things that seem cool or fun to you, because the entire point is to enjoy your time in the game, rather than just being an NPC and using the exact same thing that everyone else uses. If there's a set of armor or a skill that I didn't use here, feel free to give it a test run, and if you like it, you should absolutely use it. So the idea for a sort of basic or classic tank like this would be to be at the front of the pack. When you've come into a cluster of enemies, pull them in with your chains, and then ground them with your talons. Once you've blocked an attack, you'll use Bash to debuff everything, apply a damage shield if you need to, and then cast Echoing Vigor for a heal over time and a damage buff for your party. When you're fighting a boss, you'll want to use Pierce Armor to keep taunt uptime as close to 100% as you can, and be sure to always have a damage shield active, some heals happening passively, and while blocking be sure to bash every 15 seconds to proc the debuff from Turning Tide. While you're blocking, pull in any adds that are pullable, so the party can melt them down with AoE so they'll be less likely to leave you taunting the boss alone. And also be sure to use heavy attacks after blocking big attacks to restore some stamina, and also to proc your weapon glyph. Slam potions liberally on cooldown when you need them, and rinse and repeat until you're done. Tanking can be a fun playstyle in ESO, so if you've never tanked before, I would urge you to at least give it a try in a normal dungeon or something like that. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to it if you've never done it before, but it can be very rewarding when you start to get a feel for it and you really see how much of a beating your character can take while sustaining health the whole time. Alright, thanks as always for watching. Be sure to like the video and sub to the channel if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time with another 1-bar setup. Here's some quick footage of a random normal dungeon so you can get a little preview of what the playstyle looks like. Though if you've ever run a dungeon, you've probably seen a DK tank at least a million times. Alright, see you next time.